Do you think it's possible to write, like when you wrote for Troy, did you write him as a black guy? Or
I would urge, yes, that's what writers should do. Race neutral writing.
Yeah.
Do it. I will own up to a mistake and credit the guy that corrected me because it's more important than me feeling like I'm cool. When I wrote the first like outline, I was saying like this character is like East European and she's a mail order bride and all that. There was sort of like an ethnicity to the backgrounds of the characters, and I was designating the characters racially. I was going, well, she's a African American, she's this age, and all this stuff. And one of the producers said, "This is not a Benetton ad. Like, your job isn't to actually decide what do these characters have to do with what color they are, or where they came from." And so what I did was reduce it to age. And the position, I don't know, like the kind of life experience that they had. And I had to force my brain to do that. I had to picture each character as all kinds of different faces in order to come to the final conclusion. The irony is that the one character that I didn't do that with was Troy, because I didn't realize the entire time I pictured him as white. It was just sort of this generic, like, corn-fed character. It was like this quarterback that was like, he was the one character that I was like, he's probably white, without even really consciously realizing it. So when Donald Glover's name started to be bandied about, I was like, wait, do I have to go through the script and add yo to the beginning of each line? That's racism. Is it also racism to have him come in and go, by golly, I don't know what my responsibility is. I'm 37 years old. I know I don't want to be racist. I know I am racist. I know I fucked up somehow. And it's so funny looking back on it, because it's just none of it mattered. It was like the only thing that mattered was that I was getting in the way for that limited time, like by thinking about it too much. And so, yeah, I would urge every sitcom writer writing a pilot, like really ask yourself if you're writing a race neutral script with these characters that are coming in, because that's the whole point of diversity. Is, man, I really took over this panel. The idea of diversity, I think, is that the audience is totally diverse and changing. Humble brag, I know. So if the concept is that diversity is reflective of like some kind of audience, then the truth is that when the waitress comes through the door, it probably doesn't matter. She'll end up being black in addition to other qualities that she has. She'll be 5'2" or she'll be 6'4". You won't know until the right person auditions for the role, etc.
Hey man, this is turning into that writer's room. That's one white guy and all the other minorities.
Typical white guy.
And race neutral is great as long as everyone in the whole process is mindful that everything's race neutral, because often race neutral means default to white. Unfortunately, and
yes, because like you said, if the guy if he's described as he's 25 years old and he's awkward but he's kind of hip, and it was 12 white guys from it is the default. That's why the only solution for us was like we had to go in these waves of like, okay, we're diversity casting for every role, and we don't know we're not asking for an Asian American preteen in this role. We're not asking for an African American middle-aged guy in this role. We're asking for every single configuration, and it's we had to go out of our way to make it happen.
I think that ends up with more interesting characters too. I feel like the writers I admire do that. They write race-neutral characters. Like when I first started, I remember reading about Shonda Rhimes, and she created Grey's Anatomy, and that's a very diverse cast, and she wrote all those characters basically with no specific race in mind. Miranda Bailey's character, that was originally like there are a lot of angry blonde women that were like Kristen Chenoweth types that were auditioning, and then it was given to an African American woman because she did the best job. And I feel like Greg Daniels and Mike Schur created our show. They went for people that they really thought were the best talents, like Aziz Ansari, Aubrey Plaza, Rashida Jones. Those were all people that they really wanted, and it wasn't like, oh, we need an Indian guy or we need like a biracial girl. It wasn't like that at all. It was just like, who can bring the most to the table? We'll work around that. We'll see what they bring to the table, and I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah,
it's interesting too. There's just a story that comes to mind where a good friend of mine was writing a pilot for a network, and he wrote this role specifically based on his friend who happened to be Korean, and the character's name was Kwang. And so he wrote this role, whatever. This guy Kwang was, a funny guy, but like nothing really specifically Asian about him. So he wrote this role, pictured an Asian guy, went to casting, saw a million Asian actors like wanted to cast an Asian guy, and he just like, man, like I can't, like these guys aren't bringing it. And so he read a million and ended up shooting the pilot. The guy was named Jordan. It was a black guy. It's just like he was just way funnier. It was like, it's fine. Like it just turned out, it was like, oh man, this is a worse story. A similar story though, a president of a network, I'm not sure it was the same network. This was a story I heard where there was a protest. I think an Asian American activist or the president of an Asian American activist group was like, hey, I looked at all the shows on your network and there's 0 Asian characters. Like there's 0. There's like 400 characters and 0 of them are Asian. And the network president said, teach your people how to act. That happened. This was like pretty recently, but I'm not sure if I disagree.
And so they did, and they're here tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
From all the way from China, the Asian actor. It would be great if the wall came up and they were like.
There's still only like 3, so.
They all came out with skulls and did Hamlet.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Jeong. That's it.
Is often like Ken Jeong just has as much global adoration as he does. Like I'm sure, like Asian people get mad because like,
totally,
well, you're out there and you're being crazy and you're.
It's like on your show, whatever. But in The Hangover, he has a crazy Asian accent, which is like, man, I could never do that in a movie. Like I can't do that accent, and I give more power to him. But yeah, he speaks like a normal, like a sort of an American dude, right?
He's
No, I know he does.
But he's nuts, and so people tweet me and they go like, "Oh, the crazy Asian guy, nice going." And I go, "Well, did you want him to be more meticulous and calculating?"
Why is he playing the violin on the show, man?
Senor Chang, I love that he taught.
Yeah, that was great.
I had 2 friends actually who were, when we first graduated, were working on a children's show, and they pitched a character called Aisha based on me, and it was like, oh, she's like kind of a quirky, smart black girl, and their boss was like, that's kind of unrealistic, and instead she suggested a character named Jamal instead, which is like a name that hasn't even come up since like 1980s Sesame Street, but that was her suggestion.
A girl named Jamal?
No girls. That was just change it to a guy.
It is interesting seeing the casting videos come in. It's now all done by video. But then you'll see the video, and then on the right will be their IMDb profile with all their different parts. And, I just noticed for the black actors who come in, there'll be a black woman, and every part is like Lakeisha. I'm like, how many? It's almost like Where's Waldo? How many Lakeishas, has she played on 20 different shows? So it's interesting how Lakeisha is.
Because you couldn't tell she was black, you had to name her Lakeisha.
And then the cycle is you're having a baby, and you're a black mother, and you go, what should we name it? And you're like, well, let's name it after that awesome character on the TV show that we love, Lakeisha.
I don't know if you guys have run into this. I feel like sometimes also when we do casting, we had a role where it was like a sassy woman, and it was mostly white women, and then there were a few people of color, and the African American woman nailed it, and then we were like, oh, we didn't think necessarily who it would be, but then it was like, is this a did we just accidentally, by casting this woman, is that now going to be a stereotype? It was kind of like the weird, it's like, well, she should get the job, but now, we're being accused of like, oh, great, so this is why you got the, yeah.
Yeah, we, right after the strike, there was a writer who, I feel like was it the Tyler Perry shows where they weren't allowed in the union. So then all the WGA went around and said, can you give these people a job? And this one writer was a writer and an actor. So he met with Greg, and Greg's like, great, let's put him in the warehouse. I'm like, what, the warehouse? What are we going to put him in the warehouse? And then someone had to say, Halsted, don't talk him out of a job. So you just always have to be mindful of of what's going on. So.
On that, I think we pretty much have run out of time now. And I want to thank all of our guests up here, Alan, Karen, Halsted, Aisha, Dan.